So here's an interesting scenario. Let's talk about this. You are no longer trauma bonded, but you can't get out of the relationship. So it is a mistake to assume that anyone who remains in a toxic relationship is trauma bonded. Many are, but not all. To all the trauma bonded folks out there, the ones who feel like I can't leave this. I know it's terrible, but I can't. I want to, but then I don't know. And there's fear and all kinds of stuff, right? You understand what's happening for you, I hope. Even if you intellectually get it, you're finding that it's difficult, if not impossible, to let go and get out. You have fear, you have hope, you may still believe there's some possibility of change, you feel a sense of panic at the idea of ending the relationship. You may wonder if they'll change once you leave, if you leave. And this can apply in families too. Is the family just going to forget about me? You wonder if maybe you were the problem. You don't want to have no family in the world. You feel pushed and pulled. There's rumination. You make excuses. All of you who are trauma bonded, you know the drill. We all know the drill. But then there are those of you who are in toxic relationships and you are not trauma bonded. Not only do you see it clearly, but you would also be thrilled if this relationship no longer existed. You may be stuck because of minor children and are trying to avoid a disaster, a family court or custody situation, or you don't trust that the other parent will do the right thing with these kids, and you also know that they'll try to get more custody than they should just to punish you. You may be stuck for financial reasons. You may be stuck for cultural reasons. You may be stuck for safety reasons. And then there are infinite other variants where you still have contact, far more than you want, with a narcissistic person. And if circumstances were different, you would be out. Whatever the circumstances are, you see it completely clearly. You dread the time you have to spend with them. You know their behavior is inexcusable, and you don't make justifications or excuses. You wish the partner would leave and find someone else and just not be interested in the kids. You recognize that your situation is being kept in place by just money issues, and you may try to figure out ways to get some, and know that if you had enough, you have lottery dreams, you know you'd be out. And even though this sounds dark, you know that things will be much easier following the passing of the narcissistic parent or partner or whomever the person is. There is no lack of clarity. You would love to get out, but it can't work. Family court doesn't care that your children will be harmed by a narcissistic parent. Your own narcissistic parent doesn't care about the harm they're bringing into everyone's lives. So when you face up against this indifference by systems and everyone else, people stay. You radically accepted a long time ago, but you don't see a clear path out. This is not an easy path. To be not trauma bonded, but stuck in one of these relationships, means that you don't even have the stuff like hope to keep you going. Instead, you get to live in a stew of grief, anger, disgust, more anger, and more grief. It will take a toll on you over time. It's not an if, it's a when. That you may get sick or maybe a little depressed. So how do you stave off that toll? There's some things: social support, meaningful relationships outside of the narcissistic relationship or system, meaningful work, hobbies, connection to community, moments of awe, therapy, support groups. In a strange way, not being trauma bonded makes all of this harder. When we are trauma bonded, we are in a belief system that is making sense of it for us. The excuses we make in the face of the cognitive dissonance, the hope when we are trauma bonded. We are fighting for something. Even though what we're fighting for is basically jousting at windmills, that's quite tragic, right? But in the day-to-day, it may strangely and paradoxically be a little easier to be trauma bonded. Because to be stuck and not trauma bonded is a bit like having to go cold turkey, white knuckle, commando style, no net under the tightrope kind of stuff, and that is not easy. There is no end to it. It's staying and knowing that there's nothing you can do to make this better. And that can feel like a whole lot of existential dread and nihilism. Ongoing gaslighting, a one-sided relationship at best, or one that feels devoid of anything approximating meaningful connection. Strangely, in the long run, it does pay off because trauma-bonded folks get their hearts rebroken repeatedly. The non-trauma bonded stuck group, maybe it's not a broken heart, but you're just exhausted and depleted and having to constantly cycle through this grief. And you do always feel like you're, again, a little bit on your back foot, but you definitely have clarity. Again, it's not as much of the heartbreak. Nothing surprises you anymore. But it just sucks to have to live or interact with someone who is so selfish, entitled, unempathic, manipulative, and unself-aware. It sucks. There's no other way to put it. Being gaslighted feels gross and tiresome, and you sort of feel like you lose your faith in humanity. None of that feels good. But in this situation, you are clear. So you aren't necessarily ruminating in that same can't come to a solution way. You may even be able to be quite transparent with other people about the unpleasantness of your situation and may not feel as compelled to put such a nice bow on it for optics. I once used the analogy of having a place you live in that you really like, but it backs up against a train line. And you know that the tracks and the train are there running through your backyard. You don't think that they're going to magically disappear. And for a goodly amount of the day, you love the place you live in. It's great. But when that train roars through and the dishes rattle, you roll your eyes and say, oh yeah, there, that train. The non-trauma bonded narcissistic relationship we can't readily get out of is that train. There are a lot of good moments when you make it work, especially with things outside of the relationship. You may enjoy a job, friends, kids, pets, daily activities. But from the words of Johnny Cash, that train just keeps a-rolling, and that's what tortures me. However, someday you probably, hopefully, will get out of this relationship. The kids will turn 18, you quit the job, or you qualify for retirement. Hell, maybe even the family member passes away, and guess what? You feel better. You may even look around and say, okay, the relationship is done. Is this supposed to be harder? Like, I feel pretty good. Nah, the train stopped. The tracks are gone. You will function better. You'll feel better. Your health will improve. Your mind will be clear. You may wonder if you aren't very nice because you're happy it's over. You're fine. A stressor was removed. The stress is over, and you feel better. There may be a little bit of grief and guilt thrown in there, but in the macro, you feel better. And maybe that's the hope. Not the hope that they change, but that with time, circumstances will. And in the meantime, you do get to have clarity about it all, even if it isn't always pleasant. Thanks again.